They found a diary sealed inside a corpse. And what it revealed rewrote everything we knew about this forgotten town. That's not a creepypasta. That's a real entry recovered in what experts now call the Cold Hollow case. An unsolved mystery buried for over 73 years. At first, it seemed like just another abandoned farmhouse in West Virginia, until workers uncovered a crawl space with hundreds of rusted keys, a blood-stained crib, and a steel box etched with the words, "Do not remember." What followed were reports of missing hikers, glitched trail cam footage, and whispers of a cult that vanished without a trace in 1951. If you think this is just another haunted house story, think again. This is real found footage meets historical horror, and what you're about to hear was never meant to be heard. Viewer discretion is advised. A wealthy historian vanished without a trace, leaving behind a locked study, a broken compass, and a voicemail that ended with screaming. That was the last anyone ever heard from Thomas Whitaker, a reclusive millionaire obsessed with documenting forgotten American towns. He wasn't just a collector of stories, he hunted unrecorded truths the world had buried. On March 17th, 2022, Thomas checked into a remote cabin near Cold Hollow Ridge, a place locals had long avoided. His assistant said he was chasing a lead connected to a settlement erased from maps in 1953, known only through scattered Civil War letters and a cursed land deed auctioned in the 90s. Within 48 hours, he was gone. No signs of forced entry. No GPS signal. Just static, silence, and that final chilling voicemail. Some say he went mad. Others believe he found something the government didn't want resurfaced. But one thing's certain, his disappearance wasn't random. It was the first crack in what would soon become one of the darkest unsolved cases in Appalachian history. And it all started with Thomas Whitaker. The walls were supposed to be hollow, but the sound they made when knocked, it echoed like something was waiting. 2 years after Thomas Whitaker's disappearance, a demolition crew arrived to tear down the abandoned estate. What they didn't expect was to uncover a sealed cavity behind the nursery wall, covered in a strange charcoal black residue. Inside, wrapped in waxed linen and tied with rusted twine, was a cassette tape labeled simply, "Third Night." There was no recorder nearby, no explanation, just the eerie hum of static bleeding through the plastic. When archivists at the State University finally restored the tape, what played wasn't music or a voice message, but an 11-minute audio diary of Thomas breathing heavily, whispering phrases in reverse, and begging someone or something to stop showing the children the stairs. Analysts confirmed the tape had no signs of splicing or tampering. But here's the part that chilled even seasoned investigators. There were 2 voices on that tape, but only one matched Thomas Whitaker's. The other remains unidentified. If someone finds this tape, I'm already gone. Those were the first words heard on side B of the cassette, followed by heavy breathing, a flicker of static, and what sounded like fingers scraping against wood. The voice was unmistakably Thomas Whitaker's, only it wasn't calm or collected. It was frantic, broken, as if he was speaking from somewhere deep underground. Or worse, somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. This place, it watches you. It learns you. And then it shows you things you thought you buried. In the background, a faint lullaby plays, a warped version of Rock-a-Bye Baby, slowed down to a crawl. what sent chills down analysts' spines wasn't just the message, it was the timestamp embedded in the analog code, October 2nd, 1994, nearly 30 years before Thomas even went missing. And before his voice cuts off entirely, he whispers one last thing. If the wall hums, don't answer it. This wasn't a goodbye message. It was a warning buried in time, meant for whoever dared to keep listening. He didn't just buy the house, he circled it 3 times before stepping inside. Locals remember Thomas Whitaker's arrival to 101 Oakwood Lane not with curiosity, but with unease. The mansion had been abandoned for 47 years, untouched since the Henderson tragedy of '75, when a family of 5 vanished during dinner plates still warm, doors still locked from the inside. Thomas paid cash, no inspections, no hesitation. But within a week, neighbors reported strange behavior, lights flickering at exactly 3:33 a.m., a low humming sound that vibrated window panes across the street, and an antique phonograph playing on its own despite no power running through the house. One UPS driver claimed Thomas answered the door without blinking for a full 2 minutes. Even the town historian, who kept records on every resident, found no prior record of Thomas Whitaker's birth. And yet, he moved with eerie familiarity, as if he'd been there before. Some say he wasn't moving in to start a new life. He was returning to finish something. At first, it was just the lights. Then the house started whispering back. Within 1 week of Thomas Whitaker moving into the Oakwood Lane property, subtle disturbances began to unfold, too quiet to report, too strange to ignore. Lights flickered in perfect rhythm, but only between 2:42 and 2:47 a.m. The refrigerator door opened on its own, always revealing an apple, rotting from the inside out. But the worst part, the whispers. Short bursts of unintelligible murmurs that came from inside the walls, always repeating the same phrase in reverse. We see you seeing. Thomas installed soundproofing and infrared cameras. None of it worked. Technicians quit halfway through inspections, claiming they felt watched from the shadows. One even vomited after entering the basement, swearing he saw someone blinking behind the boiler, even though thermal imaging showed no life forms present. Thomas's journals from that time described the air feeling heavy, like the house was exhaling near his neck. These weren't just random glitches. They were intelligent, timed, deliberate. And Thomas began to suspect that reality, as he knew it, was being edited from somewhere inside the house. There's a door in the hallway, but it doesn't exist on the blueprint. That was the first thing Thomas texted his contractor at 4:11 a.m. The Oakwood Lane Estate's original floor plans, dated 1896 and revised in 1983, showed no indication of a 7th room on the 2nd floor. But one night, after following a faint humming sound and noticing a temperature drop of nearly 20 degrees Fahrenheit, Thomas reached the end of the hall and saw it, a narrow wooden door with a porcelain knob, coated in dust, as if untouched for decades. Behind it, a perfectly square room with no windows, no outlets, and a crib in the center. The walls were painted with symbols, none matched any known language. The air inside was thicker, almost gelatinous. When Thomas tried to photograph the space, his phone instantly shut down. Hours later, when he brought a contractor to show the room, the door was gone, replaced by seamless wall. And yet, his phone's data log showed a 9-second video titled, "She's Awake." It's never been recovered. I haven't slept in 6 days. Or maybe it's been 6 minutes. Time's not real in this house. That's the first line of the journal Thomas left on the kitchen table, scribbled in frantic handwriting that sloped downward, like gravity was pulling the ink. He described the same dream repeating every time he blinked, a hallway that never ended, a child sobbing behind the walls, and a voice whispering, "She's almost ready." But the worst part, he wasn't sure if he was dreaming at all. Mirrors began showing scenes he hadn't lived yet, him standing in the backyard, screaming at no one, him bleeding from the ears, him laughing, then collapsing. His phone would die at exactly 2:13 p.m. every day, no matter the battery. He started blacking out for hours, only to find post-it notes on his mirror with messages like, "Don't trust the reflection." The clock stopped ticking, food decayed in minutes, and Thomas began forgetting his own name. Surveillance footage caught him standing completely still for 9 hours, eyes wide open, not blinking once. If this house is alive, then it's feeding on us. That line came from a dust-covered journal Thomas found behind a loose floorboard in the attic, its leather binding scorched at the edges, its pages stuck together with something dark. The name on the first page, Dr. Alistair Blackwood, a neurologist from the 1940s whose records were thought to be lost in a sanitarium fire. But this journal, it was intact and terrifying. Dr. Blackwood wrote of his time living on Oakwood Lane, studying what he called a sentient structure, a house that could listen, adapt, and retaliate. He claimed it responded to human fear, learning faster than he could document. Lights would flicker in Morse code. Walls would pulse with breath. His notes detailed 17 previous residents, all driven mad or vanished without a trace. He believed the house wasn't haunted, it was aware. It remembered every occupant. It replayed them. And most chillingly, in his final entry, dated 1952, Blackwood wrote, "If you're reading this, it means the house has let you find me, but it won't let you leave." Thomas read that sentence by candlelight, just before the candle blew out on its own, desperate to escape the growing unease. Thomas packed a single duffel bag, locked every door and window, and left the Oakwood house behind. He drove 312 miles to stay with an old college friend. No phone calls, no emails, no contact. For 1 week. He tried to feel normal again, but something gnawed at him every night. The dreams didn't stop. They weren't just dreams anymore. They felt like live feeds from the house itself. He saw the hallway lights flicker, the stairwell shift, the mirror room watching. When he returned, dread curdled in his stomach. The grass hadn't grown. The dust hadn't settled. A pot of coffee, still warm. His jacket was draped over the same chair he distinctly remembered folding and storing. Even worse, the security camera he'd secretly placed was missing, and in its place, a new tape. He played it. It was him walking in and out of rooms, whispering things he never remembered saying. The final frame, Thomas staring directly into the lens, motionless, with eyes pitch black. He had never come back, but something had. One night, after another dream where the walls whispered in voices that weren't his, Thomas snapped. Driven by a mix of terror and obsession, he grabbed a crowbar and began tearing into the plaster behind the bedroom bookshelf, the one place always colder. Always. Wrong. With each swing, the air grew heavier. Then came the stench. Not mold, not rot. Death. He peeled back the final layer, and there it was, a hidden cavity. No more than 3 feet wide. And inside, bones. Human bones. Curled fetal-like. Jaw locked in an eternal scream. Fingernails clawed into the wood as if begging for release. Next to the skeleton, a rusted locket. Inside, a photo of a woman, and Thomas's face. But younger. Much younger. Impossible. On the inside of the wall, scrawled in blood or something darker, were the words, "He came back." In that moment, everything unraveled. Time. Identity. Reality. The house hadn't just been watching. It had remembered. And now, it wanted Thomas to remember too. This wasn't just a home. It was a tomb. And somehow, it had always belonged to him. In a crawl space beneath the rotting floorboards. Thomas uncovered a rusted metal box sealed with tape and smeared in something dark, too dark to be just dust. Inside, stacked like forgotten confessions, were dozens of cassette tapes, each labeled only with a date and a first name. Shaking, he inserted one into the old recorder. A voice crackled through the static, panicked, whispering, begging. "It won't let me leave. It knows when I sleep. It knows what I fear." Tape after tape revealed the same descent, people once full of hope slowly unraveling into terror, begging unseen forces for mercy, documenting the same whispers, same dreams, same room with no doors. One tape ended with a guttural scream so distorted, it didn't sound human. Another silence until a faint child's voice whispered, "Are you next?" That voice. It sounded just like his niece. But she'd never set foot in this house. Or had she? Reality began to fracture. This wasn't just a haunting. This was a pattern. And Thomas had just become the next chapter. Then came the final tape, labeled in perfect handwriting, Thomas Whitaker. His own name. Not a coincidence. Not a joke. Hands trembling. Breath shallow. He slid it into the recorder. What played next shattered everything he thought was real. It was his voice. Not similar. Not close. Exactly him. Same cadence. Same broken breath patterns. Same stutter on the word remember. But the words were wrong, hearing himself describe things he hadn't done yet. If you're listening to this, you've already found the bones. You've heard them whisper your name. But Thomas, you still don't know what's buried under the kitchen floor. He froze. How could the tape know what had just happened hours ago? Then the voice on the tape began to respond to his thoughts. Pausing. Laughing softly. Yes. Thomas. I know you're scared. But scared isn't enough. The walls pulsed. A light bulb flickered to life without power. And in that moment, he realized something was inside him. Using him, recording him. The house wasn't just alive. It was editing his future. The tape didn't just speak, it predicted. As Thomas sat frozen, his voice described events that hadn't happened yet. But then did. Exact words, exact order, exact horror. You'll try to leave again tomorrow. Your keys will be missing. You'll blame yourself. But you never had them. The next morning, keys gone. Just like the tape said. The voice laughed faintly. You're starting to understand. You're not the author of your story. It continued. At 3:17 p.m., you'll hear a knock from the inside of the walls. Don't answer. But he did, and the sound that came next wasn't human. The tape mapped out his descent like a cursed script, twisting the fabric of time, stripping him of free will, making reality feel staged, rehearsed, corrupted. This wasn't just prophecy, it was programming. And worst of all, the tape ended with a phrase that would haunt him forever. You recording this, Thomas Good, because someone else will find it after you vanish. Thomas couldn't tell what was real anymore, and that's exactly what the house wanted. Shadows moved before the light changed. Clocks reversed. His own reflection blinked when he didn't. Dreams bled into waking hours. He'd wake up in different clothes. Bruises he couldn't explain. Meals half-eaten he didn't remember cooking. He'd scream only to hear the echo answer back with different words. He found notebooks written in his handwriting, but filled with entries he never wrote. Day 37. The house let me sleep. But he was only on day 16 or so, he thought. Time broke. Memory fractured. Sanity bent. He looked in the mirror and saw his own mouth moving out of sync. Every moment felt off script, yet deeply rehearsed. This isn't my life, he whispered. But something inside the walls whispered back. It is now. Thomas Whitaker wasn't losing his mind. He was being rewritten. Thomas spoke to the house and it spoke back. Not in words, but in feelings. Vibrations. Shifts in air pressure that answered his questions before he even asked them. He'd whisper, I'm afraid. And the walls would creak in reply. Soothing like a breath. Or was it a heartbeat? He began leaving messages in chalk on the floorboards. They vanished overnight and reappeared rewritten, answering him in his own handwriting. The house wasn't haunted. It was alive. And worse, it was listening. He asked it for warmth, and the cold vanished. He asked for silence, and even the wind outside stopped. But then, he made a mistake. One night, half asleep, he muttered, I wish I'd never come here. And for the first time, the lights all went out. Every bulb shattered at once. The house growled. Yes, growled. It had feelings now. And Thomas had hurt them. From then on, he didn't live in the house. He served it. And the house. It no longer needed walls to follow him. At the very end of the final cassette, the one Thomas never remembered recording, came a sound that should not exist. His voice had just finished saying, There's no way out. If you're hearing this, it's already too late. Silence followed. Then came a laugh. Not nervous, not human. It was his voice, but twisted, distorted. Like someone mimicking him with too many teeth. The laugh echoed longer than it should have, layered with static, as if something else was laughing underneath. Something ancient, familiar, mocking. Thomas rewound the tape again and again, hoping it was interference, a glitch. But the laugh was always there, always waiting. He stopped sleeping after that. What haunted him most wasn't the sound itself, but the terrifying feeling that it wasn't coming from the tape at all anymore. It was closer, behind him, and sometimes, in the dead silence of 3:33 a.m., he'd hear it again from inside the walls. Thomas hadn't spoken to anyone in days. The house no longer creaked. It listened. He'd stopped checking the windows. They no longer showed the outside. Mirrors whispered in his own voice. Walls pulsed. Breathing. He recorded one final message. Not for help, but maybe for whoever came next. His voice was slow, trembling, cracked by something deeper than fear. If you're hearing this, I think the house wanted someone who'd understand it. Someone who'd stay. Someone who'd become it. He paused. Silence hummed. I used to think the man on the first tape had gone crazy. He whispered, as the lights dimmed and the wallpaper rippled like skin. But now I think I have too. Then came a click. And then, nothing. Just the sound of the house, breathing, watching, waiting. When authorities finally arrived at the house on Oakwood Lane, responding to a missing person report filed weeks too late, everything was disturbingly normal. No signs of struggle, no signs of Thomas. And certainly no bones in the walls. The furniture was pristine, the dishes still in the drying rack. A cup of coffee perfectly preserved on the table as if someone had just stepped out for air. Yet every room gave off the same subtle, suffocating wrongness, too clean, too still. One officer swore he heard whispering behind the bedroom mirror. Another claimed the hallway stretched longer than it should have. But officially, nothing. No body. No crime. The house was listed for sale again 2 weeks later. And in the basement, behind the boiler, a red light blinked softly, recording. Still listening. The house on Oakwood Lane stands quiet now. Its windows unbroken. Its doors politely closed, its facade immaculate as ever. No more flickering lights. No more late-night whispers. Just silence. A suffocating, calculated silence that doesn't suggest peace, but patience. Locals pass by without looking, their dogs refusing to go near the gate. Real estate agents speak of structural quirks, but no buyer ever returns after the first tour. Inside, the walls hum softly, not with electricity, but with something older, hungrier, something that remembers every footstep, every scream, every breath. And in the corner of the unused guest room, a voice almost imperceptible asks, "Who's next?" The house remains, watching, waiting. And when the door opens again, it will be ready. And maybe that's the real horror, not ghosts, not blood, not the walls that breathe, but the idea that something can watch you, know you, and wait until you're too tired to question it. Until you welcome it. If this story made your skin crawl or your mind race, don't let it end here. Drop a comment below. What would you do if your house started whispering your name? Save this video for a night you can't sleep, because you just might see things differently. And if you want more stories that unravel reality, one chilling thread at a time, hit that subscribe button. Because some doors shouldn't be opened, but you already did. Now let's go deeper, together.